It's about ready to get interesting in America. Let me put it like that. This later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640 live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. The countdown is on. In about 25 hours, the polls will close here in California. And by that time, we'll have a better sense of what the House will look like on the federal level, what the Senate will look like on a federal level. And we probably will have zero idea who will be our president at that time. And if anyone says, well, we should know on Tuesday night, you just don't understand how the process works. We have more than 80 million mail-in ballots, last I saw, that are already in the possession of various states, and they can't even start counting them yet. I think with the exception of Florida and a few other states. Legally, they cannot start tabulating. Some states, they can't even open the ballots. Some states, they can. But they can't, for the most part, count any of those mail-in ballots until the polls close in their respective locations. Meaning, if you hear someone say, hey, so-and-so's leading in mail-in balloting, they are lying. They are lying. Or wish casting. Let's just say wish casting. There's no way to know who is leading. Now, they can try to surmise looking at registrations, what counties they're coming from, historical data, how that person, that area might have voted, and then they'll make some educated guesses. But there's no way to know. Nobody knows what is going to happen. Billions of dollars has been spent in advertising. Nobody knows. And I know you probably, look, put it this way. From the messages that you sent me, you said, hey, me and all my friends, we're voting for Kamala Harris. Doesn't mean a damn thing. You and all 8 of your friends, or even 8 relatives. It doesn't matter. Trump 2024. It's a done deal. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Nobody really knows what is going to happen, not only tomorrow, but well into Wednesday, I would say even Thursday, because the more mail-in ballots you have, the longer the process it's going to take. It doesn't mean that it's illegitimate. It doesn't mean that someone's cheating. It doesn't mean that the election is stolen. It just means that there's a higher turnout and it's going to take longer to count the ballots. If you know the process, this will not surprise you in any way. If someone, wink, wink, should declare themselves the winner on Tuesday night, just know they're getting out in front of things and getting ahead of themselves. But I will say this, and we're going to be talking just about politics tonight. This is one of those rare occasions where I'm just doing straight politics. The bumpers, the music, will be featuring the rich legacy of Quincy Jones, either as a songwriter, producer, or arranger. It'll be nothing but Quincy Jones music tonight, obviously, in light of his passing yesterday at the age of 91. But all the content in between the bumpers will be just about politics, local and national. And I will say this. These two presidential candidates could not be more disparate in nature. Not only who they are, but also their closing arguments. And I don't understand a lot of things that former President Trump does. I just don't understand it. It doesn't seem like he's trying to raise his ceiling of voters. It doesn't seem like he is reaching out, calling out, trying to entice voters that he didn't already have to come in to his tent. It doesn't seem like it. When I was watching his rallies, and I watch as many of them as I can, when I was watching his rallies, it just seemed like he was speaking to the same people. It wasn't seem like he was saying, hey, come with me, even though you may not have considered me before. It just seemed like he was talking about something completely different. And it's an unconventional campaign. He's an unconventional candidate. He was previously an unconventional president. And if it turns out that all this works for him, then it wouldn't be the first time that I was wrong about something, and, kudos to him. It just seems like he's not giving himself the best chance to win. For example, when he said that he shouldn't have left the White House recently, that's a rather odd thing to say.
We had the best economy ever. We had the wall. We had everything. I built over 500 miles of wall. They don't even talk about the wall. But we had the best border, the safest border. I won't pull down my world's favorite chart because I don't want to waste a lot of your time. But my world's favorite chart, done by the Border Patrol, it said we had the safest border in the history of our country the day that I left. I shouldn't have left. I mean, honestly.
Huh? If you should lose an election, and he did, you have to leave. That's just how it works. You don't get to squat in the White House. You don't just get to arbitrarily decide. It's like, you know what? I got stuff to do next week, so I don't feel like packing. So I think I'm going to stay a little while longer. I did a real good job. The world loves me. You know, look at my beautiful border wall, that big, beautiful border wall. I think I'll stay. No, it doesn't work that. It doesn't work like that. You don't get to just stay because you feel like you deserve to stay. I mean, in other countries, they call that a coup if you do.
I shouldn't have left. I mean, honestly, because we did so well. We had such a great. So now, I mean, every polling booth has hundreds of lawyers standing there. It's all about the lawyers. Everybody's standing lawyers. Nobody should have that. You should have a damn ballot and you hand it in. Do you know that in Arizona, where I'm winning by a lot?
I don't know what he means by winning by a lot because no votes have been tabulated. Maybe he means leading in the polls. I don't know. I'm not going to explain what he means because I don't know what he means in that instance.
Do you know that in Arizona, where I'm winning by a lot, but it takes 4 hours to fill out the ballot?
Huh? What? It takes 4 hours to fill out the ballot? I don't know what he's referring to. I just don't know. You know, you can go ahead and try to figure it out. But there was something else he said that I took note of that for me gives me pause, and it seemed not the best message to send the 2 days before an election when you're talking about, well, let me set up the clip. In this clip, he's talking about the bulletproof glass in front of him, how it's not completely contiguous. It's not completely connected. There are some gaps in it. And he's explaining in between the gaps, line of sight and the fake news media. That's just setting up the clip.
I have a piece of glass over here, and I don't have a piece of glass there. And I have this piece of glass here, but all we have really over here is the fake news, right? And to get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news. And I don't mind that so much.
I just don't think that's funny, and I don't think that is something that's going to bring him more voters. Now, historically, he's always sat at around 47%. That's been his ceiling historically, and his floor is higher than most candidates. In other words, his loyal, most faithful supporters won't leave him. So he's not going to go down. I think it's around 35, 36%. It's just locked in, baked in, not going anywhere. But I don't know if that message is going to bring more to his base or his base of support, which he needs to win. I'm just talking about the analysis of it all. It's a strange closing message when you're talking about you being okay if someone shoots the quote unquote fake news media.
The fake news. And I don't mind that so much.
I do.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI AM 640. It's Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. All the music tonight is in remembrance of the Quincy Jones who passed away tonight. Yesterday at the age of 91. And in between the bumpers, we're talking nothing but politics as Election Day is upon us. It's election eve. And Twala and I were having a conversation during the break, and I have a feeling that your lives are similar to ours in this respect. Have you ever walked into the office and there's a group of people and they act like they want your opinion on politics, but actually they just want to give you their opinion on politics. They may say, hey, Tuwala, the election's coming up and it's really crazy out there. All these strange things are happening. I can't believe that they might elect Kamala Harris. Uh-oh, there's the bait. There's the bait.
There's the bait.
And how you respond is going to dictate how the next 35 minutes are going to go in your office.
Yeah.
Or it'd be like, gosh, this country, I wish they would just get over itself and just go ahead and elect a woman. Is there, counselor, is there a question in there? Because you're sitting it my way, you want me to respond so you can gauge where I am on the political spectrum so you can then launch in with your opinions. I get it all the time. And if at all possible, I never take the bait. Especially if I'm out in public, if only because sometimes I'm recognized. Some people know what I may do when I go to my hangouts and everything. And sometimes it's well-intentioned. They may want my opinion. Like someone will ask me like, hey, what do you think about this judge? Or what do you think? And I said, I haven't gotten into that yet. Or they may ask like, what do you think is going to happen? And I say to them what I say to you. No one knows what is going to happen. That's why you have former President Donald Trump going to 4 states today. If he knew what was going to happen, do you think he'd be in 4 different states? No. Do you think Kamala Harris would be spending her whole month in Pennsylvania if she knew? No, nobody knows. They're just doing all that they can to control that which they can control. But I get a kick out of folks who try to give you that little bait out there. It's like, hey, so what do you think about the election? I don't think anything. I know, because you just want to tell me what you think.
How do you avoid the bait, though? The bait is always so tasty looking.
Look, after you've tasted some nasty bait, then you realize, okay, it's a trap. It's a trap. Oh. And what I will do is I will hear conversations. People will talk politics around me, or they'll ask me a direct question. And it's like, my response is usually the same. I'm off work. I don't have anything. I do. That's my job. I'm here to have a glass of wine. I'm not here to talk about Kamala and Donald. I'm just not. But it's always funny to me, especially in an office environment. It's a little bit different when we're here at KFI because, we're not all in at the same time. We're not passing each other in the halls, spending 7 and 8 hours around each other. Like, I'm not going to cross paths with Gary and Shannon for the most part because we're just not here at the same time. Every once in a while, we'll pass John Cobelt in the hall, depending on when he's leaving and when I'm getting here. But we're not talking about this. So this is a very different work environment. I think, the typical office with the water cooler and everything. And I avoid it like the plague because it's not a 3-minute conversation. It's a 40-minute conversation with you doing most of the talking.
I have noticed how most interactions with you or Mark or even myself, we always find ourselves talking about other things. Like if we're talking to news director Chris Little, we're not talking about the news. We'll be talking about, going on cruises or a movie or something. Yeah. Like we talk about everything else but the actual news.
Maybe it's a byproduct of it. It's up to Mark whether he agrees. But for me, I know it's a byproduct of I talk about news enough in my day-to-day. I'm dealing with the news with Chris Little, that kind of thing. That's not a conversation starter. Not for me. Other than, hey, do you know of this which is going on right now? It may impact your show. But it's not like we're going to sit around and just talk about, wow, that Metro bus beating was something else. No, it's not a conversation starter. Not at all. Yeah. Not at all. We'll talk about maybe if he's riding Metro Link and if he's had any type of issues, but I don't talk about the news with just about anybody. I mean, I may talk about it on social media, but for interpersonal relationships, no. And it's not like you shouldn't talk politics in the office. It's like, no, it's just not, it's not interesting to me to have a conversation with someone about ish I do professionally. It just isn't.
I would think with you probably would receive that more, especially now, more than most, because people want your opinions, what you literally do day in, day out. So it's like, whether it be here, whether it be on one of the news networks, that is what you do. So I wonder, is it Spectrum. Out of curiosity?
No, if someone recognizes me from Spectrum, they most definitely want to talk about politics.
Okay.
That's what they want to talk about. They just because that's their only reference point. And usually I'm talking about politics on Spectrum. So they say, so what did you mean when you said, or they'll misquote me and allege that I said something that I know I didn't say. It's like, how is it you think that da-da-da-da-da? It's like, I never said that. Look, I'm not responsible for defending arguments I did not make. I'm not responsible for trying to argue what you wish I said or believed. And I had a post on social media today on my personal Facebook where I was saying, like, not a day goes by in which people try to tell me what I believe and who I support and why. Not a day goes by. Someone is always trying to tell me, oh, you're just a bleeding heart liberal stuck on that Democratic. No, they say Democrat plantation.
Oh,
that is always a good one. Yeah.
Not the plantation.
Yeah. Oh, do you say that to non-black people or only black people? Because when you say plantation, I'm thinking like slavery iconography. So, I'm thinking like you're trying to say something to me specifically. I know I sound like Bill Clinton, but I did not have sex with that woman.
On that plantation.
Right.
It's rough when you got to play the plantation card, isn't it? I couldn't even believe when I moved here and there was a place called Soup Plantation. It's like, what the hell's going on around
Toronto
here?
used to work there.
It still exists.
Is there another place called Indentured Sandwich-tude? What's plantation? Okay.
Well, put it this way. Look, I'm not going to say it, but you can say it. There's this buffet place that used to be in Torrance called Blank Barrel.
Oh, Cracker Barrel.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's another weird one.
It's like, it's a weird, put it this way. It doesn't matter what you meant when you named the restaurant. It's still a strange name for a restaurant and it's going to get misconstrued. It's
I'm
going
not
to
saying
be
that at the office.
No. Where are you going to lunch today? Red Lobster. I don't care if they're closed. I'm not going to the other places. I've refused. No, how did I get here? Oh, yeah, it's just the stuff that people say to me. It's really, really weird. It's like you thought you were going to get a positive response out of me. You thought you were going to get any response out of me? And I say all that to say the election has made people dumb. I mean, seriously idiotic. The things that they say, how they approach the subject matter, and how they engage other people. I cannot wait for this election to be over. And it's not going to be over tomorrow, like I said last segment. It's not going to be over till probably Wednesday, Thursday in terms of president. Now, we'll know who's controlling the Senate. And that'll probably be the Republicans. Well, Mo, I thought you said you couldn't predict the future. No, but I know basic math. And let me just run this down for you real quick. The Democrats are defending more seats in the Senate than the Republicans. And if you're defending a seat, you cannot add to your total. It's a virtual tie in the Senate. So the Democrats are mostly trying to protect what they already have. They won't really be able to extend or increase their margin in the Senate, which means they're more likely to lose seats. Basic math. I know it's something pretty special. They're more likely to lose seats, which means they're more likely to lose control of the Senate, as opposed to the House where you have 435 races all tomorrow. And that can go either way, but you can go by the general mood of the country where there's more data to suggest that the Democrats will probably, not definitely, but probably take the House, and we'll still have divided government regardless of who becomes president. But we won't know who's president tomorrow night. And if you're expecting that, you're going to be real upset, and it'll be your own fault, because I'm letting you know right now, unless it's an absolute blowout, they're not going to call it tomorrow night.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app as we're talking about all things pre-election. And one of the measures which I was focusing in on, just me personally, but also if you listen to Later with Mo Kelly, we've talked a lot about the county of Los Angeles, how it's governed, the role of the LA County supervisors, the limitations of the position, and how much responsibility each supervisor has. There are only 5 LA County supervisors, and I refer to them and term them as like mini mayors because they're responsible for about 2 million people, each one of them. And you can imagine how unwieldy that could be when you're asking one person to handle the services which are required and necessary for 2 million people across municipal boundaries. And so there was a movement afoot to increase the number of supervisors, maybe from 5 to 7 or even when talking about Measure G, to 9 members. But there's been a split amongst the LA County Board of Supervisors as far as supporting it. The measure as it reads would increase the board from 5 to 9, and I think most people would agree with that. But not everyone is on board with it. The other provision where it would have like a CEO, and it will be almost like a mayor of the county, and what types of powers that mayor would have, and whether the other supervisors would be subordinate to that LA County supervisor mayor, for lack of a better word. I don't know what they would call the position, but it would be an elected official. I came across this really good conversation led by Conan Nolan of NBC. Love him. And he was talking to some of the LA County supervisors about this, and you can get a good sense of some of the issues and some of the positives around Measure G.
On the ballot in Los Angeles County is Measure G, which would dramatically change governance of the nation's most populous county, from 5 members of the Board of Supervisors expanding it to 9, and for the first time allowing for the county-wide election of the chief executive officer, sort of a mayor of the county.
That's what I said.
Earlier we had on the 2 supervisors who are supporting this measure. In fact, it was their idea. That would be Janice Hahn and Lindsay Horvath.
Lindsay Horvath, you have heard on this show a number of times.
Now we're hearing from 2 LA County supervisors who oppose the measure, Holly Mitchell, as well as LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger.
And you've heard Holly Mitchell and Catherine Barger on this show. So this is something which speaks to me and is very important, I think, to the life of most Angelenos in LA County.
They both join us remotely. Thanks to both of you. So listen, currently, the Board of Supervisors, you each represent 2 million people. From what I understand, it hasn't changed since nearly statehood, the charter. So the argument is made that it is time to expand the board so that there's greater representation. Supervisor Mitchell, why is that not the case?
Actually, I think it's a great idea, Conan, which is why I brought forward a motion a year ago, February 2023, to study overall governance updates for the county as a whole, to expand the board, to consider a number of options that I think would be appropriate for the board to take into consideration. So I think that's a great idea. I think the challenge with this measure is it does much more.
Which is the countywide election, is that of a chief executive officer?
That's the sticking point. This county CEO, what types of powers he or she would have, the limitations, that's the real sticking point. And if this measure does not pass, it will be because of that.
It's the countywide election of a chief executive officer who has no term limits, who has hiring and firing and oversight authority over all of the department heads, who has full control of the budget with veto power over the board, and again has no term limits. So it completely alters the balance of power between either 5 or 9 or whatever number of board of supervisors and this singular person who would be responsible for all 10 million Angelenos.
So, Supervisor Barger, is it the concern, you represent North County, is it a concern that if you had a county-wide campaign for a...
And there's something else which is, I think, worthy of highlighting. Supervisor Barger is more to the right on the political spectrum, and Supervisor Mitchell is much more to the left on the political spectrum. So this is something which is really not partisan at all. It's about the specifics and the nuts and bolts of what the LA County Board of Supervisors would be going forward. So this is not a partisan political fight.
Executive branch, and the supervisors become the legislative branch, essentially, then Lancaster and Palmdale could be ignored because you don't have the density and the population that other parts of the district or the county have.
Absolutely. And, to that point, anyone that is saying that this is going to give better representation throughout the county is being disingenuous. This is actually consolidating power to one individual that will oversee not only a $49 billion budget, but 10 million people. So it, in fact, is diluting the power of the board and giving it all to an elected CEO, something that's buried.
If they just put on the measure that it will be increasing the number of supervisors from 5 to 9, I think it would pass overwhelmingly. But since you've also included this elected position, which would make all the other supervisors subordinate to, and as Holly Mitchell said, that there would be no term limits. That, I believe, is going to give a lot of people pause and look to see if this measure goes down tomorrow, whether one of the main complaints would be about this new position. And I would say the lack of clarity surrounding how it would govern and who would be able to, keep that person in check. So that's Measure G. That's something I'm looking at, and I think you should look at as well as far as LA County. It's Later with Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And when we come back, we're going to tell you about what you can expect when you go to the polls tomorrow if you haven't already turned in your ballot, what you should do, what you should not do, what you legally cannot do, and also what type of procedure does California have when it comes to counting our votes? We'll tell you about that next.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And as you go to the polls tomorrow, assuming you haven't already voted, haven't already dropped off your ballot, these are some things that you should know. Now, I know that we all feel very passionately about what we believe, about whoever we want to support, regardless of the race. But there are some rules, there are some laws that you have to observe, or the penalty could be jails, fines, both. Here's something that you cannot do. You cannot campaign for a candidate, and this is within 100 feet of the entrance to a polling area or around a person waiting to cast his or her vote. You cannot ask a person to vote for or against any candidate or ballot measure. Do not display a candidate's name, image, or logo. You've probably seen some incidents around the country where someone may walk in with a Harris Walls t-shirt. Can't do that. Walk in with a MAGA hat. Can't do that. Or a FJB shirt. Can't do that. So don't be surprised if you try to do it and you receive resistance. You cannot provide any material or audible information for or against any candidate or ballot measure near any polling place, voting center, or ballot drop box. And this is specifically for California. You cannot distribute, display, or wear any clothing, which includes hats, shirts, signs, buttons, stickers, that includes a candidate's name, image, logo, and or support or oppose any candidate or ballot measure. Like I said, you can't have the MAGA or FJB or the Harris Walls paraphernalia at the polls. Even though you may not engage someone else, you may not have any intentions of talking to anyone else. That alone is against the law. And you can't obstruct. You cannot block access to or loiter near any ballot drop boxes. You can't display any information or speak to a voter about that voter's eligibility to vote. And you would think a lot of this is just good common sense, leave people alone. But as they say, common sense ain't all that common. And there will be someone who will want to flaunt the rules or laws and probably will try to put it on social media, proving that they broke the law. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because as I said, doing any of the stuff that I listed and told you about is considered electioneering and is punishable by fines and or imprisonment. And of course, with an election like this, there are going to be cameras, phones everywhere. You will be seen, you will be recorded, and it's really not worth it. You're not allowed to try to influence voters in any way, shape, form. It is illegal. Of course, you can't bribe voters to vote for a specific candidate. You cannot take photographs or record a voter entering or exiting a polling place. Even though there will be cameras around, you cannot do that as far as a voter. You can't obstruct the ingress, egress, or parking. You can't challenge a person's right to vote or prevent voters from voting. It doesn't matter what you think about that person. Well, I don't think that person can legally vote. Well, you cannot intervene, and you risk going to jail if you try. And let's say all this goes swimmingly, and afterwards you wonder, well, what happens to a person's ballot? Well, for the folks who've already sent in their ballots, California is one of the few states in which they can start opening, processing, and tabulating votes before the election. In fact, they can do it no more than 29 days before the election, but they can't reveal the totals or any type of results to anyone, not to the campaigns, not to the press, not to you, not to me. So in California, they're counting ballots right now. That's part of the reason why when the polls close at 8 o'clock, and the polls will be open tomorrow from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., that's part of the reason why they have an instant return information. They're most likely just telling you what the mail-in ballot counts were at that moment, and you'll get a quicker sense of what's happening in California as opposed to different states. Just know the process so it doesn't surprise you, or if you wonder, how do they count those so fast? Well, they've been counting for the past 27 days, as it is, 28 days.
Are you telling me you can't yell out or demand information on the candidate you choose to vote for inside of a polling place?
No.
That's so interesting because my son just turned 18, first time voting. He said, Daddy, I'm in there and I was embarrassed. I was shocked. I didn't even know what to do. There was a woman in there screaming, demanding to know how come Trump's name wasn't on every name on the ballot. Where is Trump? I only want to vote for Trump. All these other people are ineligible to be on the ballot. He said that the people in there were trying to calm her down, but she kept going on and on. You telling me that's illegal?
That is illegal. You can't any type of influence. Now, if she has a question or an issue, she can engage an election worker and ask the question. But from the way you describe it, where she's creating a scene,
yes,
that can be interpreted as either intimidation or influencing, which you cannot do.
That's shocking.
Like if you went to an election worker and said, "Hey, okay, I don't understand. I thought it was just Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Why is RFK Jr.? Why is this person on it? Why is this person I never heard of also? Well, that's Jill Stein. She represents the Green Party or something." And I don't know if they could give them that information. But if you have a question, yes, you can always ask an election worker if you're not clear how it's done, because there's some voting booths which are electronic and that can be kind of confusing if you've never done it before, as opposed to the paper balloting that we've all used if you've been a voter for any number of years. But a lot of people don't know the laws, and they just assume that you can walk in wearing whatever you want, saying whatever you want, and do whatever you want, and may get surprised when they get rightful pushback from the election workers because the law is clear. You can't do any of that. And if you do that expecting that there won't be any consequence, well, you're doing so at your own risk. I can't say if you walk into a Trump county that there won't be MAGA hats on. I'm saying it's not illegal to do. And depending on where you go, you may or may not receive more pushback. But the law is clear. You can't do it. Whether you get away with it, that's something different. But you can't do it. You can't try to influence, intimidate. You can't ask someone's like, "Hey, I don't believe that person over there is a legal voter." Can't do that. Can't say that. Don't try it. And definitely don't try it with me. Don't do it. Just leave me the hell alone. Bother Mark Ronner. He likes to be bothered.
You keep me the hell out of this. I dropped my ballot off at the box at the library, and that's the end of the story. I'm done.
Look, I always like to do it on election day. I like the energy of an actual election day to drop off my ballot. Yes, I have mail-in capabilities, but I always physically drop it off because I like to see what's going on an actual election day. It's Later with Mo Kelly, special pre-election coverage and also a musical tribute to Quincy Jones, who passed away yesterday at the age of 91. We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
If you find yourself agreeing with everything we say, we're doing it wrong.
KFI
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio.